Friends, let's start by talking about two major players in the world of aviation. First, we have Air India. For decades, it has been more than just an airline. It is a symbol of India's presence on the global stage. As the national carrier, it flies the Indian flag to destinations all around the world, connecting millions of people. It has a long and storied history, filled with moments of pride and challenges. For many Indians, flying Air India is a familiar and comforting experience. A piece of home in the skies. The airline has continually updated its fleet to keep up with modern standards, aiming to provide a safe and comfortable journey for its passengers, making it a cornerstone of India's aviation sector. Now, let's talk about the aircraft involved in this incident, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. This plane is truly a marvel of modern engineering. When it was introduced, it was hailed as the future of air travel. It's built with advanced composite materials, making it lighter and much more fuel-efficient than older planes. This means it can fly longer distances without stopping, connecting cities that were previously out of reach for direct flights. The Dreamliner also offers a better passenger experience with larger windows, cleaner air, and higher cabin humidity, which helps reduce jet lag. Airlines around the world, including Air India, were quick to add this revolutionary aircraft to their fleets, trusting in its cutting-edge technology and safety features. The combination of Air India and the Boeing 787 Dreamliner represented the peak of modern Indian aviation. It was a partnership that symbolized progress, blending a legacy airline with state-of-the-art technology. Air India operates one of the largest fleets of Dreamliners, using them for its most prestigious long-haul routes, like the one from Ahmedabad to London. For passengers, boarding a 787 meant they were flying on one of the most advanced and safest planes ever built. The aircraft's impressive safety record and technological sophistication gave travelers a deep sense of security. This is why the events of June 12, 2025 were so shocking and difficult for everyone to comprehend. So, when a brand new technologically superior aircraft belonging to a nation's flagship carrier is involved in a disaster, it sends shockwaves through the entire industry. The trust that people place in these machines and the institutions that operate them is shaken to its core. The crash of Air India Flight 171 was not just a tragic accident. It was a devastating blow to the confidence in modern aviation. It raised urgent and difficult questions. How could something like this happen to an aircraft designed to be the safest in the sky? This incident forced everyone, from engineers to regulators, to re-examine the very foundations of air safety in the 21st century. The day of June 12, 2025, began like any other at Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport in Ahmedabad. Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, was preparing for its long-haul journey to London's Heathrow Airport. The ground crew completed their final checks, passengers found their seats, and the cabin crew prepared for takeoff. The flight was full, carrying 227 passengers and a crew of 15. The weather was clear, and air traffic control gave the green light for departure. At approximately 2:15 a.m. local time, the powerful Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engines roared to life, and the aircraft began its smooth ascent into the dark sky, everything appearing perfectly normal. However, just minutes after takeoff, something went terribly wrong. As the aircraft climbed past an altitude of about 650 feet, a catastrophic series of events began to unfold inside the cockpit. The pilots, who had just engaged the autopilot for the climb, were suddenly confronted with multiple warning alarms. The initial signs of trouble pointed towards the engines. It is suspected that the aircraft experienced a sudden and near-simultaneous loss of power from both of its engines. For any aircraft, losing one engine is a serious but manageable emergency. But losing both engines, especially at such a low altitude, is a pilot's worst nightmare, leaving them with very few options. With no engine thrust, the Dreamliner instantly transformed from a powerful flying machine into a 250-ton glider. The pilots fought desperately to maintain control. They would have immediately tried to restart the engines, following emergency procedures drilled into them through countless hours of training. At the same time, they would have been trying to find a safe place to land, a nearly impossible task over a densely populated urban area in the middle of the night. The aircraft's auxiliary power unit, or APU, would have kicked in, providing essential electrical power to the cockpit controls and instruments. but it could not provide the thrust needed to keep the plane airborne for long. The aircraft's descent was terrifyingly rapid. Without power, it could not maintain its altitude and began to fall back towards the Earth. Eyewitnesses on the ground reported hearing strange noises from the plane, not the usual roar of engines but a haunting, eerie silence followed by a low whistling sound as it glided downwards. The pilots made a final desperate turn, perhaps trying to avoid a more populated area or aiming for an open field they couldn't see in the darkness. But time had run out. The massive aircraft struck a residential building before crashing into a crowded neighborhood just a few kilometers from the airport, erupting into a massive fireball upon impact. The crash of Flight 171 instantly turned a quiet residential area into a scene of unimaginable horror and devastation. The impact was catastrophic, creating a massive explosion that lit up the night sky and sent shockwaves through the surrounding neighborhood. The aircraft disintegrated, scattering debris over a wide area and setting multiple buildings on fire. First responders, who arrived within minutes, were confronted with a chaotic and perilous landscape. Raging fires, fueled by thousands of gallons of jet fuel, made rescue efforts incredibly difficult and dangerous. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning material, and the sounds of sirens were mixed with the cries of residents. The human cost of this disaster was staggering and heartbreaking. On board the aircraft were 242 souls, 227 passengers, and 15 crew members. In the immediate aftermath, a desperate search for survivors began. Rescue teams worked tirelessly, navigating through the wreckage and burning debris, hoping to find anyone alive. But their hopes quickly faded. The sheer force of the impact and the intense fire that followed meant that the chances of survival were tragically slim. In the end, out of the 242 people on the flight, only one person was found alive. The crash claimed the lives of 241 passengers and crew, making it a devastating loss for families across India and the world. The tragedy was not confined to the aircraft. Because the plane crashed into a populated residential area, the disaster also claimed innocent lives on the ground. The impact destroyed several homes and started fires that spread quickly through the neighborhood. Families who were sleeping peacefully in their beds were caught in the disaster. Initial reports confirmed at least 29 fatalities on the ground, with many more injured. The final death toll from this single event rose to over 270 people, cementing its place as India's worst aviation disaster in recent history and one of the deadliest air crashes worldwide in the last decade. The community was left shattered, mourning the loss of neighbors, friends, and family. In the days that followed, the scale of the tragedy became even clearer as families of the victims gathered near the site, hoping for news but bracing for the worst. The process of identifying the victims was a slow and painful task for the authorities. The crash of Flight 171 was not just a news headline. It was a deep wound in the nation's heart. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the immense responsibility that rests on the shoulders of the aviation industry. The images of the crash site, particularly the tail of the aircraft lodged in a building, were broadcast around the world, becoming a haunting symbol of this terrible tragedy. Amidst the overwhelming loss and devastation of the Flight 171 crash, a single story of survival emerged, a small ray of light in an ocean of darkness. This miracle came in the form of a 28-year-old software engineer named Arav Sharma, who was traveling to London for a work assignment. When rescue teams were combing through the smoldering wreckage, they found him unconscious but alive, still strapped into his seat, which had been thrown clear of the main fuselage upon impact. His survival was nothing short of miraculous, a 1 in a million chance that defied all odds. He was immediately rushed to the nearest hospital in critical condition, becoming the sole survivor of the flight. Arav's journey to recovery was long and arduous. He suffered from severe injuries, including multiple fractures and burns, and spent several weeks in a medically induced coma. Doctors worked around the clock to save his life, and the entire nation watched and prayed for his recovery. When he finally regained consciousness, he had no memory of the crash itself. His last recollection was of the flight taking off smoothly and the cabin lights dimming for the overnight journey. The traumatic events that followed were a complete blank, a protective mechanism of the mind to shield him from the horrific final moments of the flight. As he slowly healed physically, Arav had to confront the immense psychological trauma of being the only survivor. The knowledge that everyone else on the flight, including the family sitting next to him, had perished was a heavy burden to bear. He was faced with survivor's guilt, a profound sense of why he was the one who lived when so many others did not. Psychologists and counselors were brought in to support him through this incredibly difficult emotional journey. His family provided a crucial support system, helping him navigate the complex feelings of grief, loss, and gratitude that came with his unbelievable survival. His story captivated the world, a human element in a story dominated by technical failure. Arav Sharma's testimony, though limited by his memory loss, became an important piece of the investigation. He was able to confirm the conditions in the cabin leading up to the incident, confirming that everything seemed normal before the crash. While he couldn't provide details about the mechanical failures, his perspective as the lone survivor offered a powerful human dimension to the tragedy. His miraculous survival, against all probability, served as a poignant reminder of the human element at the heart of such disasters. He became a living symbol of both the immense tragedy of Flight 171 and the incredible resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. With the search and rescue mission concluded, the focus of the authorities shifted entirely to the investigation. The primary question on everyone's mind was, how could a state-of-the-art Boeing 787 Dreamliner, one of the most advanced commercial aircraft in the world, simply fall out of the sky? Investigators from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AAIB, immediately began to explore several potential causes. Given the aircraft's low altitude and the sudden loss of height, the investigation quickly centered on the possibility of a catastrophic technical failure. The initial and most prominent theory that emerged was a near-simultaneous dual-engine failure. The Boeing 787 is equipped with two highly reliable General Electric Gen X engines, or Rolls-Royce Trent 1000, as was the case here. A single-engine failure is an event that pilots are extensively trained to handle. The aircraft is designed to fly safely and land with just one operating engine. However, the failure of both engines at the same time is an extremely rare event, almost unheard of in modern aviation. Investigators began to look for a common cause that could have affected both engines simultaneously. This could include issues like contaminated fuel, a major electrical system failure that affected engine controls, or even a flock of birds being ingested by both engines on takeoff, known as a bird strike. Beyond the engines, investigators also had to consider potential design flaws within the Dreamliner itself. The 787 is a revolutionary aircraft, but its complexity also means there are more systems that could potentially fail. One key piece of evidence that emerged early on was that the aircraft's emergency power generator, known as the Ram Air Turbine, or RAT, was operating at the time of the crash. The RAT deploys automatically when the aircraft loses power from both engines to provide essential hydraulic and electrical power to the flight controls. This finding strongly supported the theory of a dual-engine failure, but it still didn't explain why they failed in the first place. This led investigators down a path of examining the intricate systems that connect the engines to the cockpit. Could there have been a software glitch in the flight control system that mistakenly shut down the engines? Was there a flaw in the electrical wiring that caused a short circuit, leading to a complete power loss? These questions were critical, as any design flaw discovered in the 787 would have massive implications for the entire global fleet of Dreamliners. The investigation became a high-stakes search for a needle in a haystack, a single point of failure that led to this catastrophic chain of events. The truth was hidden somewhere in the twisted wreckage and the data stored in the black boxes. In any air crash investigation, the most crucial pieces of evidence are the two black boxes. These are the cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, and the flight data recorder, known as the FDR. Despite their name, these boxes are actually painted bright orange to make them easier to find amidst wreckage. The search for these recorders at the Flight 171 crash site was a top priority. The FDR was recovered on June 13th, just a day after the crash, while the more heavily damaged CVR was located on June 16th. Finding them was a significant breakthrough for the investigation team, as these devices held the key to understanding the aircraft's final moments. The flight data recorder is an incredible device that records thousands of different parameters, essentially creating a complete digital history of the flight. It captures everything from the aircraft's airspeed, altitude, and heading to the status of the engines and the position of the flight controls. By analyzing this data, investigators can reconstruct the flight's trajectory with pinpoint accuracy and see exactly what the aircraft's systems were doing. For Flight 171, the FDR data would show whether the engines did indeed fail, how the pilots responded, and whether any other systems malfunctioned in the moments leading up to the impact. This data provides an objective, second-by-second account of the technical side of the disaster. The cockpit voice recorder, on the other hand, provides the human side of the story. It records all the sounds in the cockpit, including conversations between the pilots, communications with air traffic control, and any alarms or unusual noises in the background. The CVR from Flight 171 was particularly important. The audio would reveal what the pilots knew, what they were saying, and how they reacted to the emergency. Preliminary reports from the CVR analysis indicated the pilots' calm professionalism turning to urgent alarm as multiple systems failed. Hearing the pilots' final words and their struggle to save the aircraft provides invaluable context that data alone cannot capture, helping investigators understand the human factors involved. In addition to the black boxes, investigators meticulously gathered other forms of evidence. This included analyzing eyewitness accounts and mobile phone videos taken by people on the ground. Several people had recorded the aircraft's silent, unpowered descent, providing visual confirmation of its trajectory and lack of engine noise. The physical wreckage itself was also a giant puzzle. Every piece of debris was collected, catalogued, and transported to a hangar for reconstruction. By examining the metal for signs of stress, fire damage, or pre-existing cracks, metallurgists and engineers could find physical proof of what failed, corroborating the data from the black boxes and painting a complete picture of the tragedy. The investigation into the crash of Air India Flight 171 was not just an Indian effort, it quickly became a major international collaboration. According to international aviation treaties, the country where the crash occurs leads the investigation. Therefore, India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AAIB, was in charge. However, these treaties also mandate that the country where the aircraft was manufactured has the right to participate. Since the Boeing 787 Dreamliner is an American aircraft, the United States National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, immediately sent a team of experts to Ahmedabad to assist the AAIB. This kind of international cooperation is standard practice and is crucial for a thorough and unbiased investigation. The NTSB brought with them a wealth of experience from investigating thousands of accidents. Their team included specialists in aircraft structures, engines, and flight recorders. This partnership was vital because the NTSB has deep technical knowledge of Boeing aircraft and established relationships with the manufacturer. The American team worked alongside their Indian counterparts, sharing expertise and resources. Jennifer Homendy, the chair of the NTSB, publicly praised the excellent cooperation with the Indian authorities, emphasizing that a joint effort is the best way to find the truth. This global teamwork ensures that all possible angles are covered and that the final conclusions are credible and respected worldwide. The analysis of the black boxes was a great example of this international cooperation. The CVR and FDR were flown to New Delhi to be analyzed in India's new state-of-the-art lab, which had just been inaugurated in April 2025. Experts from both the AAIB and the NTSB worked together to download and interpret the data. This joint analysis was critical to ensure the accuracy of the findings. Representatives from Boeing, the aircraft manufacturer, and Rolls-Royce, the engine maker, were also present as observers. Their technical input was essential to understanding the complex systems of the Dreamliner and identifying any potential design or manufacturing flaws that may have contributed to the accident. This collaborative approach is not just about finding the cause of one crash. It's about ensuring transparency and improving global aviation safety. When the investigation is conducted openly and with international partners, the findings are more likely to be trusted by airlines, regulators, and the public around the world. The NTSB chair urged for the swift public release of the preliminary findings, highlighting the importance of transparency in maintaining public confidence in air travel. The joint investigation into Flight 171 demonstrated a unified commitment to finding answers, learning from the tragedy, and making sure that the lessons learned would benefit the entire global aviation community. In the immediate aftermath of the crash, the priority for aviation authorities was to prevent a similar disaster from happening again. With the cause of the Flight 171 crash still unknown, but pointing towards a potential issue with the Boeing 787 Dreamliner itself, India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation, or DGCA, took a swift and decisive step. They ordered a comprehensive safety inspection of Air India's entire fleet of 33 Boeing 787s. This was a precautionary measure to ensure that if there was a systemic flaw, no other aircraft would be at risk. This meant grounding the planes until they could be thoroughly checked by engineers. The safety checks were extensive and meticulous. Maintenance crews worked around the clock to inspect every aspect of the aircraft, with a special focus on the engines and the electrical systems, the two areas suspected in the crash. They examined the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engines for any signs of premature wear or defects. They also inspected the complex wiring systems that control the engines and provide power to the cockpit. This was a massive logistical undertaking for Air India, as grounding a significant portion of its long-haul fleet caused major disruptions to its flight schedules. However, safety was the paramount concern, and no chances could be taken. The ripples of this decision were felt globally. Aviation authorities in other countries that operate the Boeing 787, especially those with Rolls-Royce engines, closely monitored the situation in India. While no other country issued a mandatory grounding order, many airlines voluntarily ramped up their own inspection schedules for their Dreamliner fleets. The crash put the entire 787 program under intense scrutiny. Boeing and Rolls-Royce issued technical bulletins to all their customers, recommending specific checks and providing guidance based on the preliminary information emerging from the investigation in India. The incident served as a wake-up call for the entire industry. A high-level government committee was also formed in India to review the causes of the crash and recommend changes to emergency procedures and aviation regulations. This committee's mandate went beyond just the technical aspects of the crash. It was tasked with looking at the bigger picture, including pilot training, maintenance protocols, and regulatory oversight. The goal was to identify any weaknesses in the system and propose concrete steps to strengthen them. The preliminary report from this committee, expected within 3 months, and the initial accident report, due 30 days after the crash, were eagerly awaited by the aviation world as crucial first steps in learning from this tragedy. Every air crash, as tragic as it is, serves as a crucial learning opportunity for the aviation industry. The investigation into Air India Flight 171 is not about placing blame. It is about finding the truth to prevent future accidents. The lessons learned from this disaster will have a lasting impact on aircraft design, maintenance procedures, and pilot training for years to come. If the investigation confirms a dual-engine failure due to a specific technical flaw, it will lead to mandatory design changes for the entire global fleet of Boeing 787s. This could involve redesigning engine components, updating software, or rerouting electrical systems to ensure there is no single point of failure that can disable both engines. The findings will also lead to significant changes in maintenance protocols. Airlines and maintenance crews around the world will be required to implement new, more rigorous inspection procedures for the systems identified as contributing to the crash. For example, if a specific component is found to have a shorter lifespan than anticipated, the replacement schedule for that part will be shortened. These new directives issued by aviation authorities like the FAA and EASA are mandatory. The meticulous work of investigators in sifting through the wreckage of Flight 171 directly translates into tangible safety improvements that protect millions of passengers every day. Furthermore, the human element of this tragedy will also lead to changes. The data from the cockpit voice recorder, which captured the pilot's struggle, will be used to enhance pilot training programs. Simulators will be reprogrammed to include scenarios mirroring the failure of Flight 171, allowing pilots to practice handling such a complex, high-stakes emergency in a controlled environment. This training helps pilots develop the muscle memory and decision-making skills needed to react effectively in the critical seconds of a real-world crisis. The heroic efforts of the crew of Flight 171, even in their final moments, will provide invaluable lessons for future generations of pilots. Ultimately, the relentless pursuit of answers in the wake of a tragedy like the crash of Flight 171 is what makes air travel one of the safest forms of transportation. It is a painful but necessary process. The memory of the 270 people who lost their lives in Ahmedabad will be honored not just with memorials, but by the safety innovations that arise from this investigation. The legacy of Flight 171 will be a safer sky for everyone. It is a powerful and solemn reminder that the quest for safety in aviation is a continuous journey, one that is tragically, yet necessarily built upon the lessons learned from its darkest days.